I left. Not suddenly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. I left like a breath, exhaled after holding too long, like a shadow, slipping out of its shape. I didn't run. I didn't escape. I didn't break the silence. I walked, softly, deliberately, with everything I had learned, folded into my steps. I left the room, where the light never changed, where the walls remembered me, more than I remembered myself. I left the stillness, that had become my rhythm, the silence, that had become my language. I left not because I was healed, but because I was ready to carry the wound differently. I left with the silence still inside me, not as a weight, but as a shape, a rhythm, a truth. I didn't leave to forget. I left to remember, in motion, to remember, without being trapped, to remember, without being defined. I left the version of me that only knew how to stay, not with anger, not with shame, but with gratitude. That version held me when I couldn't hold myself. It softened me. It changed me. It taught me how to breathe in stillness. But now I needed to breathe in movement. I left the silence, not behind, but beside me. It walks with me now, not as a ghost, but as a companion. I left the room, but not the memory. I left the stillness, but not the rhythm. I left the shape, but not the truth. I left because staying had done its work. It carved me. It taught me. It transformed me. And now I walk, not toward escape, not toward noise, not toward forgetting. I walk toward continuation, toward becoming, toward the version of me that moves with silence in his bones. I left, but I didn't abandon. I didn't erase. I didn't betray. I carried it, all of it, the breath, the cracks, the softness, the strength. I left, and I'm still becoming, still listening, still shifting, still walking. And that is how departure begins. I didn't leave empty. I left with silence in my lungs, with memory in my bones, with softness in my steps. I carried the breath that once trembled. Now it moves with rhythm, not rushed, not forced, just present. I carried the version of me that stayed, that listened, that changed, not as a burden, but as a foundation. I carried the cracks, not sealed, not hidden, but honored. Each one a story, each one a shift, each one a truth. I carried the stillness, the way it taught me to wait, to feel, to exist, without explanation. I carried the silence, not as absence, but as presence, as witness, as companion. It walks beside me now, not behind, not ahead, beside. I carried the memory of who I was, before I stayed, before I changed, before I softened, not to return to it, but to understand it, to forgive it, to thank it. I carried the rhythm of becoming, the slow, deliberate shift from survival to presence. I carried the voice that once hid. Now it speaks, when it's ready, when it matters, when it's real. I carried the questions I no longer fear, the ones that don't need answers, only space. I carried the quiet, the kind that doesn't demand, doesn't explain, just holds. I carried the truth that staying changed me, and that change is not something to leave behind. I carried the softness that used to feel like weakness. Now it feels like strength. I carried the strength that used to feel like armor. Now it feels like breath. I carried the version of me that learned to sit in silence and still feel whole. I carried the lessons that don't fit into words, only into rhythm, into presence, into the way I move. I carried the grief that no longer aches. It hums. It reminds. It honors. I carried the joy. That doesn't shout. It glows. It stays. It waits. I carried the stillness. Into motion. The silence. Into sound. The memory. Into breath. I carried myself. Not as I was, but as I am. And that is what I carry still. The first steps were strange. Not heavy. Not light. Just unfamiliar. I had walked before. But not like this. Not with silence in my chest. Not with softness in my spine. The world felt louder. Brighter. Faster. But I didn't rush to meet it. I let it come to me. One breath at a time. I didn't try to explain myself. Didn't try to prove I had changed. Didn't try to perform the transformation. I just moved. And the ground beneath me felt different. Not because it changed, but because I had. I walked past familiar places. With unfamiliar eyes. The colors were sharper. The shadows deeper. The air more honest. I didn't speak much. Not because I was afraid, but because I had learned that silence speaks too. I didn't smile out of habit. I smiled when it felt true. When the moment asked for it. When my breath allowed it. The first steps weren't about arrival. They were about presence. About learning how to exist. In motion. Without losing the stillness. I carried the rhythm of who I had become. And the world noticed. Some looked at me and saw something different. They couldn't name it, but they felt it. Some asked, "Where have you been?" I said, "Becoming." Some asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm real." Some didn't ask anything. They just watched. And that was enough. I didn't need to be understood. I needed to be honest. I didn't need to be welcomed. I needed to arrive. I didn't need to be celebrated. I needed to breathe. The first steps were quiet. But they echoed. Not in sound. In feeling. In presence. In truth. I walked slowly. Deliberately. With the silence still inside me. And every step was a conversation between who I was and who I was becoming. I didn't rush. I didn't hide. I didn't pretend. I just walked. And the world walked with me. I didn't expect it to echo. Not outside. Not in the world. Not in others. But it did. The silence I carried began to speak. In ways I couldn't control. It echoed in my breath. In the way I paused. Before answering. In the way I listened. Without rushing to reply. It echoed in my eyes. In the way they lingered. On things others passed by. In the way they softened. Without needing to explain. It echoed in my steps. In the rhythm I walked with. Not hurried. Not hesitant. Just present. People noticed. Not with words. But with glances. With questions they didn't ask. With moments they didn't interrupt. The echo wasn't loud. It was subtle. Like a hum beneath everything. Like a shadow that doesn't threaten, but reminds. It echoed in the way I held space. For others. For myself. For silence. It echoed in the way I didn't fill the room. Didn't perform. Didn't pretend. I just existed. And that was enough. The echo wasn't mine alone. It resonated. It invited. It softened others too. Some leaned in. Not to fix me. But to feel with me. Some stepped back. Not out of fear. But out of reverence. Some stayed. Not because they understood. But because they felt something true. The echo became a language. Not of words. But of presence. Of rhythm. Of breath. It spoke in the way I moved. In the way I paused. In the way I stayed. Even while walking. It reminded me. That silence doesn't disappear. When you leave the room. It travels. It transforms. It teaches. I didn't expect it to echo. But it did. And it still does. In every step. In every breath. In every moment. I choose to be real. The echo is not noise. It's memory. It's truth. It's the sound of who I've become. And I walk with it. Still, I didn't step into the light. The light found me. Not because I reached for it, but because I stopped hiding. I didn't raise my voice. I let my breath speak. I didn't ask to be seen. I allowed it. And that was enough. Visibility wasn't a performance. It was a presence. A quiet one. A steady one. I didn't decorate my change. Didn't dress it up. Didn't translate it. I wore it. Softly. Fully. Without apology. Some noticed. Not with words. But with stillness. With space. With the kind of attention that doesn't interrupt. Some didn't know what shifted. But they felt it. In the way I moved. In the way I paused. In the way I stayed. I didn't shrink. Didn't explain. Didn't ask for permission. I stood. Not taller. Not louder. Just clearer. And the world adjusted. Not all of it. Not instantly. But enough. Enough to feel real. Enough to feel present. Enough to feel visible. I didn't need to be understood. I needed to be true. I didn't need to be accepted. I needed to be whole. I didn't need to be celebrated. I needed to be here. Becoming visible wasn't about being noticed. It was about being willing to be known as I am, not as I was, not as I should be, just as I am, with silence in my breath, with softness in my spine, with truth in my rhythm. I didn't translate myself. I didn't simplify. I didn't perform. I just existed. And that was enough. The light didn't ask for explanation. It asked for presence. And I gave it. Not perfectly. Not completely. But honestly. And that was visibility. Not a spotlight. But a sunrise. And I stood in it. Still becoming. Still breathing. Still here. This isn't the end. It never was. Leaving wasn't a final chapter. It was a comma. A breath. A shift. I didn't close the book. I turned the page. I didn't abandon the silence. I brought it with me. Folded into my breath. Woven into my rhythm. I didn't stop becoming. I continued. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just honestly. I walk now. With memory in my spine. With softness in my steps. With truth in my breath. I don't chase closure. I live in continuation. I don't seek endings. I seek presence. I don't need resolution. I need rhythm. The silence still speaks. Not behind me. Not beneath me. But within me. It hums. It guides. It reminds. I'm not done. Not finished. Not complete. I'm becoming. Still. Always. And that is enough. I don't measure progress in distance. I measure it in depth. In how I breathe. In how I listen. In how I stay. Even while moving. I don't need to arrive. I need to continue. To walk. To pause. To feel. To carry. To soften. To speak. To be. This is not the end. It's the next breath. The next step. The next truth. I left. But I carried it with me. And I still do. And I will. 'Cause this is continuation. Not a conclusion. But a becoming. Still walking. Still listening. Still here.